Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Great Work Launchpad. My name is Chris Nelson. My site is evolveconsciousness.org. Today is, The 18th of February, 2026, 9 p.m. as usual on a Wednesday night. This is the Great Work Launchpad, episode 42, Shadow Work 40, Fear or Love 25, a continuation of talking about the motivations of fear or love within us that motivate our behaviors, continuation of shadow work, and subtitle is Fear of Sacrifice 3, and I gave it a title of Be the Light, because, that's the first thing I have in my notes, so I was like trying to be more specific, I guess, trying to come up with an idea for what to put as an image. So I was like, hey, be the light, that looks good. So came up with something that casts away the darkness, which is, there you go. You gotta be the light, be that thing that's source of illumination in the darkness, that's shining the light and being the light. So I guess we'll talk about that symbolism in a bit. Where are we? Here, yeah. So the Great Work Launchpad, if you don't know what it's about, well, it's about the great work and getting launched into the great work. So that's igniting yourself, getting the fuel that you need to propel yourself forward into the great work of taking in the truth, being embodied, and living in that force of higher love, that true care, that agape, as what motivates your behavior towards the goal of creating true freedom. And in that vein, to learn how to do the great work, well, you need to be able to either speak or write or make videos or do audio, things like that. So if you don't know how to do it, Mark Passio offers a course every year. You can learn from him, or you can go learn it on your own. There's tons of resources out there. We live in an abundant age of knowledge and the internet. People don't use it to do the great work, but you can learn these skills to do the great work. So there's nothing stopping you there. And if not, if you want to be, have your hand held the whole way and go from A to Z, well then take Mark up on his course. It's available starting January next year. So that would be 2027. You can't join now. But it's howtobecomethitruemedia.com. So go there if you want some more tailored guidance on how to start. And this weekend, we have the Freedom Under Natural Law Conference number 5, titled Ignite Hearts and Minds. So that's lots of speakers, 2 days, Saturday, Sunday, freedomundernaturallaw.com. Check that out. And one of the speakers will be Brandon Spencer, which for some reason it's not showing up, even though I added him before the stream. So, I think I was on the other, I don't know what's going on. I think I added him in the other screen. Oh, that's why. Okay, yeah. I added him to the wrong screen. Okay. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, what's going on?
Not much. Just doing this every Wednesday, like we always do. Trying to do something.
Yeah, it's kind of ingrained in my mind now. No alarms. It's like when Wednesday comes, hey, got a few more hours, I'm going to be, he'll talking with Chris. So.
Yeah, that's it's a habit. There we go. I just do it all the time. Yeah, my the whole stream thing there, Stream Ninja, I forget what it's called. The part of the app where you can add the comments on YouTube. I see them, but I click on them and nothing happens. So it stopped working. I used to use Brave, and then it stopped even working in OBS through Brave. So I was like, well, I'll try the original it's meant for. It's meant for Chrome. So I tried in Chrome, and then it loads. But yeah, it's not loading the messages. So.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, don't know what's going on. Oh, maybe it's featured chat overlay. Oh, maybe I didn't change this part. Hold on a second, guys. Bear with me.
Stream Elements has some kind of good plugin that works for OBS as far as integrating chats from a lot of the other platforms. I wonder if it works for Video Ninja or Vid Ninja.
Stream Elements?
Yeah, they have a plugin that actually works with OBS, and a lot of content creators, who live stream, how they use this plugin because it's supposed to, I guess, bring in, I guess, like all of the like Facebook and YouTube and Kick. If you're multi-streaming, it'll bring in all of those into one chat on on your platform through OBS. It's a Stream
Okay,
Elements plugin, but you can download it for OBS and it still works.
cool. Well, maybe I could check that out. Um, all right, yeah. So no more wasting time on this thing that doesn't work anymore. Oh well. Um, yes, the title is "Be the Light." It's not really. We're not going to talk about really being. Okay, we are talking about being the light. That's what the whole point of this is. That's what the whole point of getting involved in the great work and getting launched is to, that's that rocket fuel. Well, that's creating fire. Fire is light, symbolic of knowledge and truth. Well, be that. So yes, we're talking about that indirectly the whole time. But yeah, being the light. So I had that there because the light of truth is required to shine upon the darkness of evil to make it get smaller, the darkness of falsity to make it get smaller, because we live in a world of falsity. And something I noted today in my notes on my phone that keeps getting bigger. So the importance of truth is evident by how we are fooled and conned into negative pathways for living. We accept them because we don't know the truth about the nature of these things that we are fooled into. So that's the money system, government. If people knew how the money system works and how they're being impoverished and the value of their work is being devalued through inflation because they keep creating money, would they support it? Maybe, but at least they would know. They'd know that that what they are engaging in is not something that's optimal for their way of life. So it's something that they could eventually get away from, but they don't even have that. So truth is so important because without it, then you don't even know the real condition of something. You don't know the nature of something. People believe the nature of government is good. They believe the money system, there's nothing wrong with it. So they have no idea how anything works. They don't know the truths, so they can't do anything about it. So this light of truth is required to shine upon the darkness of these falsities. Because in your mind, in my earlier work, I've made some allusions to this where you have the outer light of reality and you have the inner light in your mind. And so we have a reflection of the world that we view. We have our map of the territory. And in our map, well, you need a light. Can you see anything on a map if there's no light? No. Well, in our internal domain, we have the light, and that's consciousness. We have objects that we can imagine, envision things, recall things. So that's all symbolic of the light within. And that's all knowledge of the world. So that's like a base level of light. And so we're shining light in the darkness within, and we have to shine it even more in the shadow work. That's the whole point of the shadow work, is the shadow is the darkness that follows you, that goes with you, that you can't get rid of, but you can learn about it. You shine a light and you grow in that propensity, that force, that amplitude of light, up those lumens, and that darkness will get smaller. It'll never go away because it's always there with you, but it's that negative side. And the light is only as strong as those who are speaking the truth into existence. Hence, the purpose of the great work. The great work isn't to just do it once, a one and done. It's something that requires persistence and a renewed application of your will to keep doing it. And you can look at people who've done it in the past and then stop or something. So they didn't keep it going, and they have contributed, and it's good that they have contributed. And it's fine to take breaks, maybe even year-long breaks, but to try to come back to it and incorporate this effort, this work into your life in in the long term as you progress through life, to continue in this effort, because the light is only as strong, and the voice of the truths, the choir, the conversation together, versare, the change together, the voice together, a verse, a song together, and how we converse, and there's conversation and there's conversion and converting. That's all the same root. So we're trying to convert, and there's a conversion from a darker way that we live in the world to a lighter way, and that requires people speaking the truth into existence. So your voice does matter, and like we said before, your voice alone isn't going to change it, but it can, as you repeat things and you go through material and you put it out, you can have an influence upon others that can then do the same and have an influence upon others, and it can grow and grow and grow. And the most important is the moral truth. And for more people to become aware of morality, like how we are, our time, we make an agreement to give of our time in order to receive a currency so that we can do things with that time, as opposed to bartering as a medium of exchange. And we think it's legit, but it's being devalued continuously through inflation because they keep printing more of it, so you're being stolen from. So that moral truth is not had. And plenty of moral truth, like the moral truth of government. So the moral truth, all you need to know is the 7 basic violences, the thefts, and then you can apply all you can understand all the derivative violations of that as they manifest in their plurality throughout existence. But that moral truth requires more voices to be beacons of light to diminish the evil within everyone. And as I've gone through in my morality presentation, well, that's not necessarily that you're creating evil, but you're participating in it through the support, through the tolerance, through accepting it. And that's what most people have of our condition of life, and the belief in the legitimacy of authority and government, is they do support it. And if they don't support it, then they're certainly tolerating it, because even though we can't change things ourselves, the way that we can bring that as an eventuality to change the world, because it has to be done together, because we're all creating this together. That is the way that you don't tolerate it, and you're saying, no, I want to change it, and you're actively doing something to change it, is the great work. That's where you're saying, I'm not going to tolerate it, because if you're not doing the great work, then you're still tolerating it, because you're not doing the work that is a requirement to fulfill the goal of not having government, of not having authority, of not having immorality, of not having the slavery, of not having the evil all around us. So the moral truth is the most important one to be understood, and it's not being understood because there's not enough people talking about it. And that's why it will never be in education, and how things could radically change. And that's the only way things are going to change, is through education. And if there was education at a young age, well, there wouldn't be all this reticence and this neglect and this ambivalence to do this work. Because as I said before, with the note I have on my phone, truth is very important. People don't understand the importance of truth. And if we were educated from this by our parents or by an institution, a collective, a group of some kind that was like, okay, here, teach the kid things that are important. If they were actually teaching that, then people would recognize the importance of truth and knowing of things that are important related to morality and how they're being hoodwinked, screwed, bamboozled, conned, and deceived, and they wouldn't want to support it. But since they don't have this training of raising them in consciousness through education or from their parents, then they're not aware of these things. And so the so-called education system is just a boot camp for joining the workforce, and that's all it is. It's not teaching you these fundamental things of actually changing society for the better, because that's not what they're interested in, even though that's what they purport to be. It's just to make you another cog in the machine so that the system, the machine, can keep going. And that system, as the Matrix says, is enslavement. It's a system of control, and that's what we live in. So, in conclusion to this little part, what are you doing to shine a light and improve the situation of our enslavement? Because that's what the great work is about, is you becoming a beacon of light, you shining the light on, I've referred to it as the great work level 1 on the effects. You can shine a light on the effects, and that's a lower form of work, because you can talk about the details of the prison all you want, but that's not getting you out of the prison. So you got to talk about the causal factors, the root causal factors, the psychology, the philosophy. Know thyself, self-knowledge, self-respect, develop that self-love, the shadow work, and work towards that goal of creating true freedom. And by embodying that force, that propensity of love, as opposed to the force and propensity of fear and stagnation and involution. I'll pass it to you, Brandon.
Yes, truth is the light, but we aren't necessarily just talking about, how knowledge and the illumination, because when you look at light, it also means, something that doesn't weigh a lot, so in the allegories, like on my yacht, you heard of being light as a feather, so we talked about, doing the shadow work and, not being weighed down by that baggage, that trauma. So if you have that heavy burden that's lifting you down, it's going to be a lot harder to be light, on your feet and do this work by shining, your light. Plus, two, if something is really heavy, the more hands you have, the lighter it's going to be when it comes to trying to move it, or when it comes to try to uplift, that force. So, when you see the phrase "be the light," yes, knowledge is a good thing, but it also, it goes a little bit deeper than that, because, you know, the trauma will hold you back. The trauma will keep you from getting involved in doing this kind of work. And then two, it is a heavy burden. It is a heavy burden. We need more voices. We need a symphony. We need a gigantic orchestra, all, you know, singing to that tune, playing the instruments, and no matter, what they create, so all of those voices can unify, so we can all shine that light, to try to, dispel the ignorance and, hopefully, build a world of freedom for the next generation, if not the generation that comes after that. Hopefully. There's no guarantee, but hopefully.
Yeah, and what you mentioned with the burden, yeah, it certainly is a burden, that's for sure. Um, Mark certainly talked about it, and we've talked about it a bit, that if the world was moral, we wouldn't have to be doing this, and it wouldn't be something that we have to be burdened with through a moral obligation, a moral responsibility. We talked about this before too. It comes down to a recognition of the responsibility you have to not only fight for your own freedom, to end your own enslavement, but the enslavement of everyone, because it's all together that we're creating the world that we have. So you're not going to have it from you alone. And that heavy burden to do the great work, and the allegory with Ma'at, that was a good play on the words, because that's what it's weighing is. You have to be as light as a feather, but that's what also Ma'at was symbolic of. This, I don't know if I have it here. I have too many images to search from. But, is it this one? Hey, there you go. So Ma'at was, I have it here, light. You're light as a feather. Ma'at's feather of truth and justice. It's light as a feather, but that's also what the symbolism of Ma'at is getting at, is that you have Apep, Apophis, and Isis, Apophysis, but it's also the precursor is Ma'at. And Ma'at is symbolic of the good side versus the evil, the light instead of the darkness, because that's what Apep was, the snake, the dark snake, the god of darkness, the snake. I'm trying to find an image, but yeah, I guess I didn't load it. So um, that's a good symbolism to bring in, and we talked about that like two episodes ago, I think. We talked about Ma'at. And so, all this information is something that people talk about, but they don't really, or that is in the symbolism is what I mean to say. It's all in the symbolism, but it's not properly understood by people throughout the ages. It's in Egypt, it's in the Egyptian teachings, but they don't understand what they're looking at. And, that's what it symbolizes. The feather of Ma'at is all about being light as a feather, yes, but it's also that green language aspect of it represents the light as well. And that's why you had Isfet, the force, and Ma'at as the force. And then the personifications was Apep and Apophis, and Ma'at with her wings and the goddess and the feather and all that. Yeah, so I just wanted to bring that in a bit more. The another thing that related to the heavy burden is we lighten the load with more people doing this work. And as Mark said oftentimes in his podcast, that many hands make for light work. So the work that we have to do is, when there's only a few people doing it, it's a lot of work. And he mentions the wrestling term of tagging out. If there were more people doing it, you could tag out and take more of a break. So yeah, that's why we need more people, because it is a burden, because it falls on us. Like, imagine if there were 10 million people doing it. Well, you could still do it as often, like this is once a week. We could still do it once a week, but then we'd be like, yeah, there's a lot of people, so maybe we could do it every 2 weeks or something. And it'd be like, we would feel more at ease with doing that. I could do it once a month and just do 12 shows. I could do that, and it would give me more time. But I want to try to do once a week, to do as much as I can. Could I do it every day? Probably not. Not for me. Not in the condition of my life with a family and everything.
I think that would drive anybody insane. Trying to do this every day.
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, if I was being paid to do it and I had it was a job, then yeah, I could do it every day. But that's never going to be a reality for me. So like Alex Jones has done it. He sells things in his shop. People value him and what he does, so they support him by buying items in his shop, and he's able to do it. But yeah, so you got to have. He mostly targets the great work level 1 of the effects, and yeah, the more important part, the harder part, because it's less interesting. We've talked about this before. The flavor of the week is just whatever shit's going on there, whatever new nonsense of immorality they're spinning out that's affecting people. People want to talk about the effects because that's what's continually catching their attention. This novelty aspect of our psychology, that we're completely fixated on the new things. And these eternal truths are not new. Hence the saying, there's nothing new under the sun. And why they are less interesting in that respect, because you're not talking about something new every week, just going with the trend, whatever's trendy, whatever's the new thing in people's attention that they want to learn more about. And that's why these people, like Alex Jones or other people in the truther and freedom community, are more popular, because people are interested in what is going on out there, and they're not so interested as what's going on in here, inside of themselves. And on top of that novelty aspect is, if you're going to look within and figure things out of how you function and get your shit in order, clean your house and get it in order, doing that inner work, well, that requires a lot more work, more contemplation, more mental fortitude and thought and application, because it requires more depth of understanding to understand these concepts, as opposed to just understanding an event that happened today or last week or last year or something. All right, so I wanted to add that. So, what are you doing to shine light to improve the current situation of our enslavement? And that's done by effectively creating long-lasting media that can be repeatedly accessed and consumed by many others. And this isn't just Facebook posts or Twitter X posts or Instagram posts or I don't know all the other social media there. Take your pick, whatever the hell it is there.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, the things that are popular that I'm not part of. There you go. Those things. It's not just about posting there, because that's not indexable. It's not easily accessed. So you need to. It's also not local chats with people, because that's certainly not accessible online by people. That's a one and done. It's very ephemeral. Once it's created, it's gone, and then it's gone, and the only place it exists is whoever heard you talking about it. So it takes stored, archived, permanent, findable, searchable media content that can be accessed and discovered online. So not walled behind a gate of some kind of where you can't really access it. Like if you post on YouTube, most people are going to be using Google, so it's a valuable place to post in order to have things found. I think if you go in, like, you search for things and you go to the images tab, you're not really going to see Odyssey. Maybe you're going to see Rumble. I don't know what the other popular ones are. Probably not BitChute. So to have things findable, I guess with the algorithms and what they favor in certain platforms, you got to find a way to make it accessible and discoverable. And when you have a website, well, the bots for search engines, they go through and they scan through the contents of your site and then they index it. And that's why when people search for things, they can find your stuff on your site or through a video on YouTube, because you have a title, or if you have a description, well, those words can be found in your search. That's how search engines are supposed to work. Clearly, they're not searching or weighing everything equally. They have their own weighing algorithms. And like I mentioned, alternative media platforms are probably not high up there on the list, so you're probably going to find junk before you find something that you're actually looking for. So you got to think of it as material that will be relevant forever. You got to make evergreen content, is what it's called. And when you're talking about eternal truths, it's evergreen because they're eternal truths that don't change no matter what event happened now or in the future or in the past. That's never going to change. And if your material does happen to be around for centuries, like if you upload it to a site and it doesn't get shut down because something more popular like TikTok, and then in 20 years maybe YouTube's not around, so everything that was on YouTube isn't around anymore. Who knows? But if it is around in 100 years, well, then someone can still find that. It's evergreen in terms of like persistence online, but it's evergreen in terms of the content itself when you're talking about things that actually matter, no matter the time, no matter the age, no matter what's happening. These are things that will always be true, especially the quality truths. Those are the best kind of, that's the quality evergreen content. So this work of creating this material that can be accessed and consumed by many, many people, not just the person you're speaking to directly on a one-to-one basis, but a one-to-many relationship. People don't want to put in the time to do that. They want other things in their life. They want to spend their time and sacrifice of that specific amount of time, as I talked about last week. You have 24 hours in a day, maybe sleep for 8, maybe work for 8, you have 8 left. So people are going to take that time and they're going to sacrifice, they're going to take it, consume it, and it's going to be sacrificed in that consummation by consuming it into something. So the time is going to go here and it's going to go there and it's going to go into all these other things. So they want other things in their life that they're going to put and invest their time and attention into. So they don't want to do this part of the great work, this burden of this moral education and other truths that eventually lead to the development of true conscience within the definitive knowledge of the objective difference between right and wrong, which is what true conscience is. So they want to do the things that they want to do for themselves in a short-term gains mindset, not in a long-term gain for all of their progeny and their descendants and all of humanity. They're looking at a short-term game for their life in the immediacy, in the now, or the long term of their personal life, not the long term beyond themselves. They haven't expanded their care and their compassion and the wider scope to encompass things beyond that selfish life that they want to live. So and many of these people in the truth and freedom movement, well, they want freedom, or they claim to want freedom, but they don't want to do this work to make that real, true freedom happen. So it's just, I think Passios referred to it as like verbal diarrhea, it's just gum flapping. You're gum flapping and just words come out of your mouth and they mean nothing because you're saying, I want freedom. Okay, well, you can say you want anything, but what are you actually doing to make it happen? And being part of the freedom movement, for most people, just means that you want to find some more freedom for yourself, selfishly. So you're going to try to work and get a better job so you can buy things and get a more comfortable life and not have to work so much maybe, and maybe homestead and try to be more self-sufficient so you can be less dependent, because being dependent on the system and things in the system, being dependent on others is viewed as being less free. And so you can view it in either way. Spending more time to do those things, whereas you could be free from doing all those things, would make you more free to do other things that you want to pursue, or pursuing things like this and teaching the great work. And then there's the opposite of, being free from the constraint of being dependent on other people. Then you're more free because you're more independent. So there's two ways to look at it and they oppose each other. But that's not true freedom. So people just want freedom for themselves. It's the my freedom, my truth, my time, my survival, my well-being, and my comfort. That's usually what people are focused on in the my freedom and my truth movement. It's all about selfish concerns. It's me, what I want for me. So this movement hasn't make progress because it doesn't know what freedom is, or even how to create it. And we've talked about this before. They have this vague notion, this idea of freedom, that they even can think that they are already free, even though they aren't. And even if they recognize that they're not as free as they could be, they don't have a clue as to how to create it, because they're still pursuing, maybe monetary reforms, or into crypto or something, or political reforms, and they're still playing the political game. They're still playing these games of deception and deceit, or outright enslavement, that are not going to get them to the goal that they think that they're working towards creating or achieving. And hence, again, the importance of truth, that people don't realize. They have a very low understanding of the world and the complexity of the world and how things actually work, to understand what they are supporting and how they're getting more of what they claim they don't want to get. So people who are in the selfish mindset and they say they want freedom, but they don't know what it really is and they don't know how to get it. They're mostly selfish, egotist, Satanists, lying to themselves about how they are going to get freedom. And they don't want to hear how to actually create freedom, which is what a lot of us in doing the great work, talking about these important aspects, we may have talked about how do you actually create freedom, what's required. People don't really want to hear it. And if they do hear it, then are they actually going to take it up to the next level and put their mouth before, put their actions before, in front of their mouth? My God, I'm fumbling it. Yeah, I'm losing the saying there. The words where their mouth is? No, what is it? Do you remember? Wait, help me, Brandon. What is it?
So like you putting the cart before the horse?
No, you got to put your
Yeah.
your
I know the
words.
saying. Yeah.
Damn it, man! I can't put your.
I'm terrible. When it
Oh,
comes
the
to
money
saying.
isn't it related to money? Put your money where your mouth. Oh,
Put your money where your mouth is.
is that what it is?
Yeah.
It sounds off. Anyways, maybe that's what it is.
Yeah. Because the money is like you.
Oh, yeah, people
backing
just
up.
talk and they
Yeah.
put your So the money. Yeah. Well, anyways, that's the bad
The
representation.
money is the action.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Put your money where your mouth is. People just want to talk and they don't. Yeah, so that must be what it is. I just couldn't find it. I'm like trying to think of it. Okay, so yeah, you got to put your money where your mouth is, in that way that's phrased. And even if you understand it, you gotta be willing to work on it. And people aren't interested. They reject people who are explaining it. This is the way that it works, and these are the requirements to get this thing that you say you want. But they're going to reject the requirement because no, that's not it. I can do this and I'm going to get that goal, and I can do this reform and this and I'm going to get that goal because you're wrong and you don't know. Or if they're like, oh yeah, that's true. That's the requirements. But then they reject the responsibility to be a part themselves, becoming a part of fulfilling those requirements. They don't want that responsibility. That's what we just finished talking about. And it's here. Yeah. That fear of responsibility. The fruit of evil is going to be ended by the ignorance, and then you got the fear of responsibility. Oh, look at those messages. Why is all this coming up here? Why is it working on this one? Anyways.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's
the
behind me
have been
here.
up.
Oh, they've been up.
Yeah, the messages have been up for about 25 minutes now.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if you saw them.
All right. No, I was totally oblivious to it. I wasn't looking at the OBS view. All right. I erased that. Since it wasn't working right anyways. It's not supposed to show them all. I'm supposed to pick the ones. But yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. I'll have to test it myself at some point. Right. So what was I talking about? Yes, rejecting the responsibility. People do not want that responsibility. And that's what it comes down to, is even when you work up this level of like getting people to care enough, getting people to know, and then care enough to know, and care enough, then you got that lack of caring to do something about it, because ultimately they don't want that responsibility. They don't want to engage in that work. They just like, no, that's for you. You're good at that work. You do that. And, maybe they'll even support like people like Passio, and they'll donate and stuff, but they don't really want to get involved in it themselves. So they're rejecting that responsibility, and that's what part of this whole fear or love we've been talking about for this is the 25th one now, is that propensity, that force, that polarity of fear within you It's not the fear of like you're fighting something or you're freezing or you're necessarily like physically running away. But this rejection of the responsibility is a running away. And that's what people are doing, is they're running away. It's that force of fear that serves fear. By running away from this responsibility, you're serving the force of fear. You're serving involution. You're serving entropy. And that's all correlated also with evil when we're looking at good or evil and morality and immorality. That's why it's not a direct creation of immorality, a base primary level of immorality of the thefts, but it's a secondary immorality that's a wrong because you're still serving that negative polarity, that force of fear, that involution, that stagnation, that entropy, and that evil, because you're running away from the work to end evil. And if you're not working towards ending evil, then you're allowing the evil. And that's why it's a secondary level of immorality, another type of wrong, of denying that responsibility to do the higher level morality of the great work and fulfilling the requirements that will get us to have our birthright. And that's why it is everyone's responsibility, because it's our birthright that has been denied and robbed from us. So not interested in that responsibility to align their behaviors with those requirements, because they're all about themselves. That care, we've talked about it on and on and on, that care within them is not ignited. It hasn't grown to a sufficient capacity. The flame has not expanded enough for them to get out of themselves, to get over themselves. You could term it like get over yourself. And they're not over themselves. It's all about them. Like I mentioned, it's not about, they're not in this expansion of consciousness, of awareness, of compassion, of care, of agape, looking things in the long term, not the long term of their personal life, but the long term of not even their own descendants and their progeny, but the long term of humanity, and working towards a goal for the long-term betterment of humanity, because that's what it's about. You're not going to do this work and get it in your lifetime unless 10 million other people do it, that influences even more people. And, I think I was listening to, it was Passio's like final solution in his like solution part after he talked about the problem and the mind control, the 14 methods of mind control, and then he got into solutions. And the last one was positive thinking. And I think it was this episode. And he just mentioned, like, again, what we've talked about, like the voice of truth needs to be so strong that people can't ignore it. And that's the goal of this building up and building up the choir of truth, is that imagine if it was everywhere. And we've talked about it before. Imagine if half the videos on YouTube were all about either the Great Work Level 1, about the problems of the manifestations of evil, or Level 2, the causal factors of how to rid the world of evil, and all this shadow work and all this stuff. Imagine if half the content was there. Could people actually ignore it? No, they'd be drawn to it in some way or another. And then it'd be like so much in their face over and over and over that they couldn't ignore it. And then slowly and surely time would go by, and then they'd get involved in it and they'd learn more about it. And that's the point we got to get to. And that's not probably going to get to in my lifetime, even in my like maybe it'll never happen. And that's why Passio is like, from the beginning, it's always a possibility that we can turn things around, but is it likely? Is it looking optimistic? No, it's not looking optimistic at all.
Yep, because you can't lie about it. Yeah, you got to be truthful with yourself.
Yeah. So that's why you got to be truthful and be honest with yourself that we're not probably going to get it in our lifetime, but you're still going to do it anyways, because it's not about just you. It's about the future of humanity that you're a part of. Look at the aggregate that you're a part of and trying to change that aggregate into a positive direction. So people just focus on themselves. They're not interested in that responsibility and aligning their behaviors with that requirement, because it's all about themselves. The things that they want, the resources they want, what they want to do with their time, for what they want personally, for just them, or for their children in their immediate lives. So they want something to happen, like freedom. Who says they want slavery? The opposite, right? No one would say that. So they want something to happen if they realize there's a lack of freedom and they should have more freedom, but they ignore the requirements to make that happen. I'll pass it to you.
You brought up the freedom movement, when you was talking at the beginning. And in order for something to be a movement, it has to be advancing toward, the goal. There needs to be progress. It needs to be going forward. So, we're not really moving toward anything. We're actually taking steps backwards, because I still think, things were better off 20 years ago. Things were better off before COVID. It seems like like with each day passes, things just keep getting worse and worse, especially in the so-called freedom travesty, because most of them still refuse to accept that which is true. Then when it's like when you ask them to even define what freedom is, most people, don't have the definitive, meaning of it. So it's like, how can we get to a stated goal if we can't even come to, the true definition and all be on the same page? So then how can we all, get to this, have finish line if we're all running, northwest, like we're all over the place. So again, there is no movement because we're not advancing toward anything. The only thing our species is advancing to is more slavery. Is completely no consciousness in most people, and it's just the refusing to accept that which is true. How Passio talked, about this in the great quote. People believe things that aren't true, and then once the truth is presented to them, they deny it and they slap it away. And that's sadly what most people, who claim to know what's going on are still like, because when you try to introduce them, held to the knowledge of morality and natural law, they'll still say, oh, that's either, religion or, natural law doesn't exist. And that's the problem. Because if, like Chris said, if majority of the work that was online on these big platforms were tailored toward, morality, even, tailored toward more of the level one stuff that Chris talking about, then the world would be a different place because people would be forced to look at this information. And I don't mean people would be coerced, but sadly, most people are just followers. So they'll follow, whatever is in front of them. They'll follow, whatever the trend is. So if majority of the content that was put in front of them was, hell about natural law, was about symbolism, was about, morality, was about true occult topics, then they would just follow those topics because most people are just followers. And that's just a sad reality of it. And if 51% of the information, bare minimum, was tailored toward good quality information, then we would get good quality behavior in the form of output. But sadly, I don't even think we have half of 1%. You know, the information that's tailored toward true quality is so abysmal. It's almost like it's not even there because the true information gets drowned out by all of the garbage. And that's what's happening. And that's why our voices are not being heard because there's, a few voices, but the voices are being drowned out, and that's why, the ones with the loudest voice, usually are the ones, who influence change. And that's why the light is dying out. The flame is dying out because people don't want to bear the torch. People don't want to be the torch bearer. The real illumination of the torch bearer, not the bullshit Olympic games, but was the spreading of the knowledge and you taking that in and you wanted to, have your inner light burning and you're also willing to pass that torch on by more education, by anyone, who wants to listen, by morally educating the next generation. That's what it really truly means to be the torch bearer or the passing of the lamp.
Yeah, we need more people. Well, that goes in with many hands make light work. Pass it on. Everyone's running that relay race and taking turns. And yeah, and then in that case, it would look like, if there were tons of people, you could make a huge network of people doing live shows like this, and then it would be exactly like that. someone would pass the torch to me. Okay, I got it now, Wednesday at 9 p.m. to 10, and then at 10, I pass it to someone 11. You could have people doing it 24 hours a day on some big network, live shows, people who are taking
Yep.
on the responsibility. And it would literally be like that passing on the torch, because each day you'd have people passing it on. Okay, now it goes to you on this network, and that's what some people do with whether it was Oracle or Genesis or RBN or whatever in the past radio stores, and now there's like Revolution Radio. There's people passing the torch on whatever content they're talking about. I'm not necessarily saying that they're talking about these higher quality truths, all the people, but that's the idea behind these radio stations. Is like, well, you're trying to get some information out that has importance and can have an impact on making people more aware about the problems or the solutions, and working towards applying those solutions to get the world to change.
Can I say something real
Yeah,
quick?
yeah, yeah.
You know about that. I get a lot of people don't want to talk about morality. Like I get it. It's like it's it's something in like in the culture. It's like when you talk about morality, you are not going to be liked. But you can start off talking about any topic, that you feel comfortable with, then start to transition, over to natural laws, then start to transition over to, hell, objective morality. Cause I get it. I totally get it. People don't want to talk about morality because you are just not going to, you're just not going to be liked. That's just the sad truth about it. Cause once you start talking to people about true morality, people are going to be like, oh, you're on your moral high horse, or like, no, no, it's not that. Like, this is the solution. So, how I get it, but you can start talking about topics that you may feel strongly about, or, topics that you may be more knowledgeable about, then slowly transition over and then start to, give them those, bits and pieces of morality, then start to build up and then start talking about, how natural laws, symbolism, how causality, how metaphysics and the nature of reality.
Yeah, and talking about morality, you say people aren't going to like it. They're not going to like you, and there's a reason for that, and it's a very obvious reason once you realize it. It all has to do with ego, I, Satanism, this mini me Satanism of, because that's what um, that was part of my presentation on Funnel 4, where I talked about Satanism was egotism, aka Satanism, where it's an over focus on the I, on the you, and you're not able to face yourself in the mirror. And that's why people don't like to hear about morality, because all you have to do is talk about something being right or wrong, and the person will automatically judge themselves in contrast to that information. So let's say you're telling them something that's true, a moral truth, and their behavior is in contradiction with that moral truth. Well, then it's, oh, I'm in opposition to what is right, so I am wrong. I don't want to be wrong. So then they get up with that ego defensiveness. It's all about the I. They can't face themselves honestly, recognize how their behavior, this is a failure of their behavior, and how they should change their behavior. So a person with moral integrity, even if they're, or who has some moral integrity, even if they're not living up to that moral level of integrity, or they're not aligned with it, they're not in that ma'at, in the feather, and their behavior is not aligned, their heart's not measured up with in equilibrium with the feather of ma'at, they are actually able to be honest with themselves. This first aspect of initiation, and that was the third episode, and I think the Great Work Launchpad, I termed it something to do with getting initiated.
Man, that was so long ago.
Yeah, the barrier. Anyways, all this is like barriers. We did a part of it on barriers to initiation, and the first one was stop lying to yourself, and people can't do it because they have their behavior that they are attached to, because whatever they're doing is me. I am doing this, and it's true that the best way you can define someone in their current state of being is by their behavior. There is no other better way. It's not by their thinking or by their emotions. It's the culminating result of that trinity of consciousness of their thought, emotion, and action. The action is the culmination of their thoughts and emotions. And the action is what represents you the most, is what you do, not what you think, what you say, or how you feel. Even though those things lead to what you do can be in contradiction to how you think or what you say or how you feel. So the actions are how you will know them. And these actions are in contradiction to something that is true, and people don't want to hear it because that is the thing that they are attached to as their sense of self. And it's not, they don't have the self-knowledge, oh, well, I can change my behavior and I can become a different person. For them, this is my behavior. They're so calcified in their ego. They have such a lack of self-knowledge that as soon as you tell them something that contradicts their behavior, then it's an attack upon the I, the ego. And then the defenses automatically come up, and then they don't like you because all you're just doing is speaking the truth. And that's why I came up with this saying, 11, 12 years ago now, I guess, is that you judge, insult, and offend yourself by your own actions. Your actions are what do it. And if someone's just telling you the truth and it contradicts your actions that you don't want to let go of because you're too attached to falsity, because you're too attached to yourself and you can't get over yourself, then you're going to defend that behavior and reject the truth. And that's where you get into all the cognitive dissonance. That was a large part of my earlier work. And so this is why when you talk about morality, people don't want to hear it because they're in opposition to morality and they haven't even begun that pathway of initiation of being honest with themselves, of being able to, another term that I don't know if it exists before, but I came up with objective detachment, rather being subjectively attached to your sense of self and how you view yourself in the world, that you're capable of detaching and like a third person view and evaluating in this introspection and self-reflection yourself, to look at yourself honestly and be like, oh yes, this piece of information is true and I'm failing in that, and I can look at myself honestly and not immediately reject it just because my sense of self and my identity is so attached and ingrained into my current state of being that I can't even envision, I can't even imagine another state of being that I can be, and have none of this knowledge. So I'm just going to be completely focused on who I am now, and anything that threatens that, well, I'm going to attack it, I'm going to deny it. And so you're the messenger of that degradation of their sense of self. And it ties into other aspects that I talked about earlier on, is when you poke holes in people's worldview and you're destructuring them, you're deconstructing that false worldview and that false reality, that false sense of self. That creates a lot of discomfort and anxiety because you're bringing in that darkness, that the light they thought they had was a false light, where you see things, but what you're seeing isn't what's actually there. They thought they knew something, and then you're saying, nope, and you're poking a bunch of holes and you're destroying that foundation of what they stand on and what they walk on in life, that map, and you're poking a bunch of holes. And then, well, how are you going to navigate the territory if your map has a bunch of holes? Well, can I step here? Can I step there? No, there's a big hole there. So whenever you're presenting information, you're going to get people who are going to have holes punched into their worldview and their self-view, and they're not going to like it because it's destroying a part of themselves. So people haven't engaged in this know thyself, like in the Matrix. And it's one of the questions that really helped me develop was, who are you? And you get into that in the multiple levels and really contemplate that. And then once you realize that, I term it an ego personality identity construct, and you can realize that you can reconstruct it in any way and you shouldn't be attached to how it currently is constructed, and you can just remake yourself so you don't stay attached and you objectively detach from yourself, and you can stop lying to yourself, and then you can improve yourself, you can better yourself, then you can better the world. Pass it back to you, Brendan. We'll wrap it up there.
Sure. But who needs self betterment when you have Jesus? When you have these politicians who are gonna save us. I mean, who needs to work upon themselves, man? Like,
Jesus is the only way.
oh
He's your
man, I
savior,
know. Yeah, I know.
the
There's no
only
need to
path.
be. Yeah, yeah. There's no need to be, responsible. There's no need to, take accountability. And that's the thing is, you it's like people see the effects, in the world. They're all over. These effects are just a manifestation of what's going on with an individual. How the schism, all the like all the fighting, all the division, it's all coming from internal. Because people don't know themselves. They're constantly saying one thing and they don't back up, how they don't put the money, where the mouth is, and they just talk, or they put their money somewhere else, and it's all contradiction, but it's an internal contradiction. And that's what we are trying to, shine light on. You talked about this, how I talked about this, just been talked about, many times. But until we get to that internal healing, until we get to that internal unification, there will never ever be any form of external, healing. There will never be any form of external, unification. And that's why the knowledge of objective morality is so important, because then you can analyze and look at your own behaviors and go into those deep forms of mentation and say, hey, what does it mean to truly be a good moral person? Am I walking the walk, and not just talking the talk? And then you can reanalyze, how your behaviors of things you've done in your own life and the things you are doing now to those who are in your environment. And that's why having this knowledge is so important, because then you can start to analyze yourself, you know. All right, I'll close it on that because I'm getting kind of heated up.
Well, you can keep going, but that's the one I was looking for. Actually, is you gotta walk the walk, not just talk the talk. That's the one I was thinking of like talking and like acting, and I couldn't. That's the one I was looking for, not the put your money where your mouth is. I was more looking for that one.
Okay, yeah,
Like
yeah,
talk is cheap. You gotta walk the
yeah.
walk, not just talk the talk. That's the one I was mainly looking for there. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's about being aligned, and that's the thing is people aren't aligned. They'll say one thing and do the complete opposite. So it's that form of contradiction. The whole walking the walk and talking the talk is you back up what you say with action, and I have more respect for people, who will back up what they say, but cowards just talk and they don't back it up. And that's what we have, a lot of cowards.
Yeah, I was thinking the saying, "You got to be straight with me," and there was another one I thought of earlier today that had to do with that. Um, I didn't write it down. I think it was when I was thinking about the importance of truth. These idioms that we have. I think it was related to ma'at, because that's what ma'at is too. Is the equilibrium is straight and being
Yeah.
straight. So yeah,
Because
it's incredible.
being straight means you wasn't bent, you wasn't crooked. And I bring this up in my presentation that hopefully people will watch on Saturday. But yeah, being straight means you was honest, because the fastest way to any destination is a straight line. So it's the moral path, and then you have the whole right angle, being upright, fair and square. But yeah, straight means you wasn't crooked,
Be real.
you wasn't bent.
That's another
Right.
one. That's what I was thinking of. Be real with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Be straight with me. Yep. Yep.
because
Gotta
that's
be
what
real.
ma'at too was reality. That's another
Yep.
synonym. And there was ma'a, which was real, and ma'at was reality, and true and truth. Ma'a was true, and ma'at was truth. So yeah, too bad all that wisdom has been lost, and people don't know about it.
Mm. Oh
Imagine,
man.
imagine if they just taught that one thing. We're going to teach you in grade 5 or whatever. Like, here is the symbolism of ma'at and the multiple levels of complexity and what each of these things mean. They'd have to teach it for several years of the depth of it. But yeah, imagine if that was being taught in schools of like, here's the symbolism and here's what it relates to in terms of knowledge and why these specific symbols in this image relates to these things, and then here's how it relates to even our phrases in our language. We even have
Yeah.
aspects of that derives from this knowledge that we don't even have awareness of anywhere, but it's still in our language in some way.
Yep.
It's crazy.
But now they just say, oh, hell, they just worship cats and, hell, can worship snakes and crocodiles. It's like, no, it was a little bit more deeper than that. But because I actually had someone tell me, no, the Egyptians just worship cats. And I'm like, nah, dude. No, those cats were symbolic of something, like all those images and, hell, those were symbols that represented aspects of ourselves and things in reality. And like people just can't even grasp that simple concept because, again, symbolism is not fully understood. And if you can't grasp those symbols, then how are you going to, imagine like deeper concepts and meanings, and then you get into like the more creative, holistic intelligence. But, you know, it really does show how there literally is no consciousness. Hell, there's no conscience and there's no consciousness because people aren't aware of patterns and their awareness is just, oh boy, do we have a long way to go.
Yeah.
A long, long way to go. But
Yeah. Well, you can join us next time to on this journey of this long way to go, because we'll keep going on the journey and trying to get us to that place we're trying to get to, even though it's a long way to go. And we'll end the show in the usual immortal words of Mark Passio to motivate you out there.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
One more time.
How about trying to get out there and do the actual great work so this world isn't such a fucking hellhole, huh?
There you go. That's what it's about. Get out there and do the work. Try to make this place less of a hellhole. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you gained some valuable knowledge. See you next week.